Hi everybody, and welcome to Once Upon a Scarf. Today we have a silk square presenting to this channel that poses a mystery. Did a famous artist have a hand in creating its design? Spoiler alert, maybe. With initial investigation, this scarf appears kind of lackluster. It's a traditional horse and hound print, and not a very great one at that. Compared to these masterpieces by Hermes and Gucci, our scarf features spindly, almost cartoonish men and beasts in a landscape that looks fairly dashed off. After some extreme digging into images online, it turns out that this scarf's layout is not even original. It's a direct copy of a famous painting by French artist Carl Vernet. But here's where things get weird. This scarf comes with a pedigree. It's on quality silk. And as this tag proclaims, it was produced by Bianchini Ferrier, one of the greatest scarf manufacturers for the greatest French design houses in the 20th century. The scarf also holds a clue that until now has gone undetected, possibly because it means nothing at all. But it does raise a could it be question. Stay with me now if you'd like to hear a story about an extraordinarily wealthy patroness of the arts, an uber-talented painter who sought her good favor, and a scarf that may represent the age-old dance between talent and money. I'm the author of 2 classic books on vintage fashion, Secondhand Chic and It's Vintage Darling. To begin, our cast of characters. The first is not a person, but a firm, the aforementioned Bianchini Ferrier. This silk house, situated in the great textile center of Lyon, France, produced fabrics and scarves for a who's who of French haute couture: Saint Laurent, Lanvin, Hermes. The list goes on and on. The grand couturier didn't design and manufacture their scarves in-house. Instead, they farmed the work out to firms like Bianchini in France and Ratti in Italy. Bianchini also produced squares under its own label. Sidebar: if you come across a Bianchini Ferrier scarf secondhand at a great price, pounce. You're getting a piece of fashion history. Now, the most famous affiliation this great silk house had was not with a couturier, but with an artist, which brings us to our second character in the mystery. Raoul Dufy was a French painter who is most famous for his exquisite Côte d'Azur landscapes, his racetrack scenes, and a mural in Paris that is flat out eye-popping. It's an IMAX-sized, in-the-round depiction of the history of electricity from ancient times to the present. Dufy's works represent sunshine, the good life, rainbow washes, and posh settings. For Bianchini, he created textile designs for fashion and furnishings, his gouaches or preparatory designs, which were auctioned en masse by Christie's auction house in a sale of Bianchini Ferrier holdings in 2001, sell in the thousands of dollars. So, reeling this back in, we know Dufy designed for Bianchini Ferrier, but frankly, that means next to nothing for this scarf behind me. There's no signature, no archival record of any connection at all. But we do have another clue, a record of this scarf's original paint-on-paper design, found in the Bianchini auction catalog. Christie's described it as a scarf with a hunting scene in late 18th century dress, within a border of buttons inscribed Tokashok. So how did my scarf, based on this design, wind up for sale second-hand in England? That brings us to the third character in this tale, one Anne Stroop Kessler. She was a Dutch woman from a wealthy oil family who married the future director of an even richer oil company, Dutch Shell. They lived in the English countryside and were incredibly sporty. He a former Olympic tennis player, she an avid horsewoman. Their wedding invitation gives an idea of that sporting passion. In England, she rode with the famous Cottesmore Hunt, but more significantly for our purposes, was also a great patroness of the arts. This was a lady of taste, and distinction. She collected Renoir, Picasso, Modigliani, Cézanne, Toulouse-Lautrec, and more, well before they were million-dollar items at auction. And she decided, in 1930, that she wanted the great Raoul Dufy to paint a portrait of her family on horseback. The commission didn't go silky smooth. Dufy lived with the family for a spell, sketching and assembling. His first pass at the painting, finished in 1931, was rejected. It was insufficiently elaborated, in the opinion of the Kesslers. His second attempt, of 1932, passed muster. This painting, together with the rest of her extraordinary collection, now hangs in the Tate Modern Museum. So the relationship between Dufy and Ans Kessler, like so many between artist and patron, was beset by false starts and setbacks. Which brings us back to this scarf. Like the portrait of the family, it depicts a hunt scene. This one is far less abstract. Even so, these spindly horses bear a strong resemblance to Dufy's weirdly hoofed animals in paintings elsewhere, showing the same kinds of anatomical oddness that frankly seems bonkers in a person who painted horses constantly. But one of Dufy's quirks was drawing with his non-dominant hand to amplify the unpolished nature of his work. Another is a somewhat maniacal attention to foliage. Could it be that this scarf was a token created by Bianchini at Dufy's request as a way of wooing this horse-obsessed woman? I'd say that's preposterous if it weren't for one thing. Remember the buttons that encircle the scarf, which are typical of those found on equestrian jackets. Remember the strange letters that spell out gobbledygook. I tried to unscramble them online and got nothing. But here we have our scramble of letters. Now, if we take a look at this weird glyph at the bottom of the button, which may just be a little decoration, or you could read it as an M. Let's add that to our string. And now let's try a little bit of rearranging. Still gobbledygook, right? But if we take this H and think maybe, possibly, that could actually be an R, substitute it, what we get is a phonetic spelling of Cottesmore Hunt Club. This being the name of the organization beloved by Ans Kessler. I realize that as evidence goes, this is only slightly less flimsy than the silk of this square, but I think the story here, if properly researched, might yield hidden treasures. This is why great vintage scarves from the mid-century are so fascinating. They're not just accessories, casually designed to bring color and flair and clout to a neckline. There's so often a story and deliberate artistry that's just waiting for someone to discover it. Could that be you? And that's today's scarf story. I hope you enjoyed it. Please press the usual buttons if you'd like to see more.